Okay, good. All right, I think I am live. Hello, everybody. How's it going? So I sent invites out to my Patreons and to Star Dancer if she wants to join. She's perfectly welcome to. Let me see here. I'm just resizing the windows now so I can check out the chat here. See who's all in. And let me see. Also, let me know how the audio is, if you guys can hear me. If I sound like a robot, or I sound like Zuckerberg on trial. Let me see. Okay. Let me see. Okay, so that is the link. Let me try this. I'm trying to figure out this link thing. No, it looks like it should work. Paste. Ah, okay, I get it now. Let me try this again. So what I've done in the past is try to let people enter via the chat, and it hasn't worked for people in the past. So I'm just checking to see why it's not working, because it's so much easier just to invite people from the chat rather than figuring out how to invite them via Twitter or Facebook page or email. So it's just really annoying. Let me see. Who do we got? Okay, Star Dancer. Hey, Star Dancer. Animist is here. Hey, Animist. Animist, I sent you an invite. Star Dancer, I also sent you an invite. Mary morning. Hey, Mary, I sent you an invite also. Lady Ambrosia. Hello, lady. How are you doing? And Angelina Velasco. Hello, Angelina. How are you doing? Severed Head. Hey, how's it going, Rays or Severed Head? How come did you change the name of your channel? Or are you just under one of your many aliases? Let me see. So for those of you who I sent invites to, Star Dancer, Animist, Mary, let me know if you have problems. If you want to come in to the Hangout, and if you do want to come in, if you're having problems too. And I will see what I can do, because I sent all of them to the email addresses. You know what, Animus, let me send you that on Twitter, because I don't think you don't really get the emails for whatever reason. So let me. I think I have you. I think you're following me. I think I'm following you on Twitter. So just bear with me. Sorry, guys. It'll just be a quick second. Okay, Animist. So I tweeted you the link. So maybe that'll work. And let's see. Haven't received it. Start answer. You didn't receive it, huh? I sent it to your Gmail email address, the one that I have. So check that one. I don't know where you sent an invite, but it hasn't showed up on Yahoo or Twitter yet. Okay, Yolanda, thanks. Okay, let me try this. Let me check this link here. 3V. Okay. Try that link right there that I just put in the chat, and you should be able to connect. At least try it and let me know if it works. Severed head. Oh, okay. So Rays, you changed your channel name. Okay. The internet hates us. Yes, Animus, the internet does hate us. It definitely feels like that sometimes. It's okay. Why is whatever not working anymore? Why was it working just a couple of weeks ago? Well, actually, this link thing has not been working for a very long time. Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Rays or Severed Head. Severed Head. I don't know. I'm not liking your name, Rays. I gotta be honest with you. Not liking that name. I don't know. Maybe it grows on you. It's like, hello, Severed Head. My name's Twisted Limb. Hello, Twisted Limb. This is Severed Head. All right, good night. Let me see. Okay, so how else can I invite people? Let me try sending you the link directly. Start answer. Let me see. Because I know you sent me. Let me reply to the sender. So now I'm responding to your email and I'm posting the link in there. Let me know if that link works. I'm actually gonna put two links in there. The very first link is the one I think should work. The second one right below it is the one that might not work. So I'm sending you this email right now. Start answer. So just give it about 5 seconds and it should arrive in your box. Let me see. And Animist, how's it going with you? Okay, so Animist, yeah, you don't get emails. Let me see. So annoying. I wish there was an easier way to do this and figuring out how to. It just seems like such a pain. Because I want to get people in here to talk about this. But I thought it would just be a good topic to talk about. The link in the chat sent me to an empty call. Okay, so that one was wrong. All right, so let me try this one. I missed. Try that link I just posted in there. Try that one, see if it works. Because either YouTube, when you post a link in the chat, it either adds or subtracts characters from it for whatever reason. So I was trying to figure out which characters it either adds or takes away, and because it worked for me, but that doesn't really say anything because I started the Hangout. Let me see here.
Am I on here?
Hey, hello. How's it going? Hey, there she is. Looks like you muted yourself, though.
Oh, no, I want to mute.
Oh. Do you have, because I hear it in the background, do you have it playing? Looks like you muted yourself, though.
Oh, no, I want to mute.
Do you have, because I hear it in the background, do you have it playing? Looks like you muted yourself, though. You call in because of an error. Twitter Yeah, Animus, try Twitter because I tweeted you the link. Hey, Star Dancer. I'm gonna mute you while you get that figured out, okay? There we go. Let me see. Okay, so
Okay, is everything okay?
I think so. Did you turn off your speakers?
Okay, so
No, I still hear an echo.
no, I still hear an echo.
Do you have headphones?
Okay, is everything okay?
I think so. Did you turn off your speakers?
Okay. Huh, that is frustrating, Animist. When you are in the call, you need the sound to come from the Google Hangout window, not from YouTube. I think she needs headphones. Yeah, I think so too. Well, there's always some kind of weird little bug that happens with this. Let me see. Still trying to get other people in here. Animist, how the hell am I going to get the link to ARG? So frustrating. Let me see. So Stardancer was able to connect. And I emailed her the links. Hey, Deborah, I think you muted yourself. There you go. Hey, how did you get into the Hangout? Did you click one of the links that was in the email I sent you?
I'm getting a lot of repeat.
Right, like an echo?
Yes, the first one.
Okay. Oh, so the first link worked?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Okay, so the first link worked. Okay.
Yes, it did.
Okay, great. Thanks. Let me try. Okay. Animist. I'm going to put one more link in the sidebar here. Try that one. See if that one works. Well, anyhow, while we're getting that figured out. So how's it going? First of all, how do you like to be addressed?
Star Dancer's fine.
Okay. All right. Well, that's all right. I just wanted to check. Because that's not the name that it has on your little icon.
Really?
Yeah.
I have a couple of accounts.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's okay. It's just because your icon says Deborah.
I am having feedback from you where it keeps repeating.
Yeah, you have to if you probably have two screens going. You probably have the Hangout, and then you have the YouTube. You're going to have to either close the YouTube one or mute it.
Got it.
Yeah.
I got it. This is new for me. I'm very computer illiterate.
That's all right. Well, you were able to get into this Hangout, so.
I can push a button.
Well, yeah, but other people aren't able to connect. So, like, I'm trying to get Animist in here, and but of course, to be fair, I don't. For some reason, the emails don't connect with him. So,
I think. Well, I'm on a Chromebook. I think everybody's system is different. I think that causes a problem.
yeah, that could be.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, yeah. No, more than welcome. So for those of you who don't know, Stardancer was the one who sent me that witches are in control of everything video.
We rule the world.
I love that video. If you notice, half that video is just me laughing.
I rolled when I first saw it.
Yeah. He is just one funny character. And then I was like filming the video, and then like halfway through it, I'm like, wait a second, how many t-shirts is this guy wearing?
I know.
So I had to go back and record a little bit of audio for that and then put that in there. It was just like, why is he wearing 4 t-shirts? Oh man. So tell me a little bit about yourself, Stardancer. How did you get, or what path do you follow, and how did you get into that, and all that fun stuff?
Oh boy, that's a long story. Okay, didn't have a name to put on myself, but since I was very young, I connected with nature, even though I have allergies to everything. While other kids were out playing, I was looking at wild flowers and noticing how some things sparkled in the sun, how this on the cellular level. I mean, just everything. I can connect with both wild and domestic animals, which has developed more over the years to where I can speak to like hawks, owls, rabbit, deer, that type of thing. When I got into my late teens, where I lived in St. Louis, we didn't have a whole lot as far as information on witchcraft or Wicca or Satanism or anything. But I read what books there were and was very interested. And so picked it up, put it down for quite a few years. And then I got to where my son started dating a woman who is Wicca. And he left some books in his room when he left to move in with her. Well, I became very curious and went in there and read a book for years. And then I got to, I don't know what the name of it is, but it was from a shaman and healers and medicine men and women from all over the world. And I went, oh, that's me. Then I started picking up, he had a book in his room from Raymond Buckland. It was on the on witchcraft, and I read it, and that was it right there. That was it. So I started my path. A friend of mine worked with a gentleman who was an elder in the Pagan Alliance, North Carolina, hooked me up with him. He hooked me up to a coven because he was so far above me in knowledge and wisdom and information that I started with them for a year. And then they kind of went down a very deviant path. So I left and just took off on my own.
Yeah, the Pagan Alliance is all around the world now. That's a really good organization. They do a lot of stuff.
But where many are in their coven and they're taught that way, I was taught the basics. But as time went by, I was getting messages from friends who were either clairvoyant, psychic, intuitives, or whatnot that I didn't need to have a coven. And I had a spirit guide that was a teacher way long ago. And when I would do a spell or would do some kind of ritual, I would hear within my head, no, do it this way and do it how I tell you to do it. And it would work.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned that way.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And it sounds like when you were a teenager in St. Louis, when was that? Was that like the 70s or 60s?
70s.
Yeah.
I would date myself too much.
Yeah, because back then there was not a lot of information. I think that's one of the things that maybe most people who, were born in the, let's say, late or early 90s don't realize about witchcraft now. Nowadays, you can go online and find all kinds of information and other people and stuff like that. But back in our days, there was there was bookstores, and then there was libraries, and maybe there was a bookstore that might have a billboard that's posted about pagan stuff, or maybe you knew somebody, but it was very different back then. If you wanted to get a hold of a book, you had to go out and search it, and then you had to maybe go to the library, and it was quite different. Research took a lot longer. Nowadays, I think most people can research a topic pretty quickly,
Well, back then too, the information I was getting was propaganda that was taught by the Christian church,
right?
About how evil witchcraft was, and about all the evil spells that were being done. And I'm thinking, this doesn't resonate with me.
And hello, Animist. How's it going?
Okay.
And you finally got it. Oh, and he muted himself.
Okay.
But you finally got in here, huh?
Okay. I thought I was muted before. I was trying to unmute myself. It's a good thing I wasn't reciting that book backwards. Would have caused all your ears to burst into flame.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I got to be careful with that one. Owa Tagu Siam.
Oh, don't say that.
You got to just say it faster and faster until it comes true.
Yes.
Okay.
That instantly makes everybody dumb within the earshot of that chant.
Anyway, so is my volume okay?
Yeah, I hear you okay.
All right. I always like to check that. I've been on some adventures, and so I make sure the settings are still doing all right.
No, I think it's a good idea anytime I do a Hangout to check the volume and, make sure everything's going good. So, yeah, nothing like sitting there chatting for like 10 minutes, realizing that nobody can hear you.
And you'll never be that brilliant on that topic again.
Yeah, right, exactly. You'll never be able to match those same words.
Right.
That little pearl of wisdom that just fell into nothingness.
That's why we got to wiretap all of our outgoing communications, except for that 17 minutes right there in that one afternoon. We shouldn't have taped that one, but so we, anyway. Well, I think, I'm sorry, with messing with the settings, I missed what is Star Dancer going by? Are you going by your name or your title or your handle, or did we decide that?
You can just say, "Hey, you," I'll answer.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Star Dancer is fine. I just wanted to check just because.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I thought your story was interesting, and that's in keeping with what a lot of people have done who weren't lucky enough to have, family connections or just happen to live near the right person. And yeah, in the 70s, my family knew a lot of people who were pagan and witchy and stuff. So I think I got really lucky with that. Other than just my family connections, just also knowing Romani and Wiccans from, there was not a lot of Wiccans to be found in the early 70s. Mm-hmm. But I knew a couple as a kid that were friends of the family. So I got really lucky, and I mostly learned from family and from, as Dancer was saying, directly from the guides, because they're with you in the moment when you're doing that kind of magic.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's something that, it's one of those things that it's a legitimate form of instruction, but it's not a documentable form of instruction. And so I think it will always remain a little bit nebulous as a source, a little bit questionable as a source. It's like, I can't hear the voices in your head.
Okay, I've lost sound.
No matter how.
You lost sound? Do you hear us now?
Sound.
Okay. Well, anyhow, let us know. Well, of course you can't hear us.
Chat, go in the chat.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly.
I am not.
Yeah, sounds like maybe she's still having problems. Uh-oh. It was going so fine just a second ago.
Sound. How did that happen?
And then it all went. Well, hopefully she'll get that figured out pretty soon. So now, Animus, that's really interesting because when I was
again.
I'm gonna mute you for a second. Can you hear us, Deborah?
That's where I was.
Okay, I'm gonna mute her for a second. I think it's really interesting you say that, because like I've gone through several different stages of my development. Not really like everybody goes through stages, but for my personal path, it just was. I just noticed my own path sort of went through different stages. But there was a stage where I was very much trying to connect with a deity that I felt very close to when I was younger. One that I felt was very intimate to me, that I had this really strong connection with. And there was a lot of my practice that was heavily influenced by that. And so a lot of the stuff that I did was kind of sort of following that sort of inner, what's the best word for it? Kind of inner impulse might be the best way to call it. So it sounds, does that sound sort of similar to what you were talking about?
Yeah, I mean, you can label the same process, or you might experience the same process in any number of ways, depending on how you know how to label the process. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
To someone in a particular culture, it could take the form of a particular deity form, because that's how they can approach it. Whereas someone else in a different culture might see it as, like an animal spirit or but different ways. People experience intuitive teachings in a lot of different ways because they only know how to accept it as something they understand. It's like you can't explain to someone what chocolate is, what chocolate tastes like. They have to know,
Mm-hmm.
But if we both taste chocolate, other than a few, weird biology things, we can say, oh yeah, that's chocolate.
Mm-hmm.
Which is one of the reasons why I think it's good for people from different paths to work together on stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's funny how you can have some very similar processes that you've been experiencing somewhat differently, but when you actually are working with someone, you realize you're doing basically the same thing with just a little different spin on it, but it's the same,
Mm-hmm.
One of my many little proverbs is, the chaos will match the shape that you bring to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's interesting. Like I said, sort of following that sort of impulse, because one of the things was a particular deity that I was trying to connect with, or that I had a very strong connection with. I really only had a name to go with, and then I started looking up some of the mythology, but a lot of the symbolism was just lost to history. And so a lot of it I had to sort of intuitively follow or try to, create, or some, it It wasn't like, okay, well, Jupiter. So this is all the characteristics of Jupiter. This is his statue. You know, it wasn't like that. It was, okay, this is a goddess that is just lost to history. And, you know,
like trying to follow Ozymandias or something. All that's left on one line in a poem. Do what you can with that and see what comes up. And that
exactly. You try to, exactly. You try to follow that string in the history, and it like goes back 30 years. You're like, fuck.
Right. And so you
doesn't go all the way back to ancient Greece.
Right. Or, you know, or you know, it's like Hammurabi. Okay, someone who's into ancestral thing could, hey, Hammurabi, but you know, what do we know about him? Just a little bit of PR. But that could still be a valid way for someone to learn.
He wrote a couple of laws, right?
Yeah, he wrote some laws. Or somebody wrote some laws for him, basically.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, he was in charge when the laws were written. You know, he didn't even make them up. He basically signed the bottom of the bill.
Yeah, he chiseled his mark into the stone afterwards.
Right. Yeah, because it was, they were just codifying the common law of the era. But still, there's a symbol that you could take what you have to, and you might meet someone.
Oh my!
You know, there'd be no way to know whether it was the actual Hammurabi.
Is anybody there?
We can hear you.
We can. Well, she can't hear us though.
She must have got her speakers muted somewhere in the. Well, we're seeing you on the Google chat. So anyway, what I decided was I don't care. I don't care which label you're using, and I don't care if it's actually.
I can't hear you.
Oh no. Speakers.
Yes.
Right, I can't hear you.
See if we can find the settings for her.
What are we doing here?
Well, she wouldn't even hear us.
Well, I could type
I think she said she was on a tablet.
Must be having.
I'll try to do a little bit of tech support here. Have you tried plugging it in?
Yeah.
Is the electricity on?
Okay.
Is your device plugged into the wall?
Okay, I'm gonna be back in a minute while you guys are working on that. I gotta grab a container of liquid.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. So, okay. Well, while Star Dancer wrestles with technology, I will go through the chat here.
Here we go.
Can you hear us now?
Yes, I
Oh,
can.
good. Oh, good. Okay. All right. Great.
I was wondering what happened.
Yeah. Well, we Animus had to step off for a second to get to do something, but we were talking about. I was sharing a story of when I was trying to connect. He's back. Huh?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. I just heard an echo.
Let me see about this again.
Well, it might not be on your end because I don't hear it right now. But anyhow, so it was a story about it was a deity that was not very commonly known, and so there was not a lot of information. So a lot of the information that I had to do to try and connect with this particular deity at the time was a lot of it I just sort of had to follow by, quote unquote instinct. And so that's kind of what I did. I was relating to the story that Animus had shared earlier. So can you hear us okay, Star Dancer?
I'm sorry?
Can you hear me okay?
It's cutting in and out, but I live at the foot of a mountain.
Oh, okay. Well, sometimes what people do is they cut off their video and just do the audio. Sometimes that helps.
Let's see if
But if you do that, can you still hear us? Can you still hear me when you turn your video off?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, because for whatever reason, sometimes like on Heathen Haven, that's what we do, is we turn off the video, and it seems instead of going through whatever computer stuff goes through, it doesn't have to do the video, it just does the audio.
But you were speaking about doing it intuitively. Sometimes that's the best way.
Mm-hmm.
Get your own personal experience out of that and a closer relationship with who you're trying to work with.
Yeah, and when you're working with a lot of the nature magic, you know, like landscape magic, shamanic magic, that's the only way you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's no history book that's going to help you deal with a living situation. And so that it forces you to develop very early on that sort of inner receptiveness to what's basically emerging from the chaos. So I think that's a good skill to practice. I mean,
kind of like hands-on training.
Yeah, well, and
Yeah.
it's real sink or swim. You know, it's like I've said before. Did you find the fish or didn't you? Did you find the herbs or didn't you? That's how we know whether you were doing it, possibly whether you might have been doing it right. You know, you might have gotten lucky once and say, well, I think what I did was what worked, you know. But if you get to the point where you can go out and consistently achieve effects time and time again, then you must have been doing it right, because it's working every time. And so then you can put down that work for me. And then when the next generation comes along and you try to describe the process to them, they're kind of have to develop the same skill set over
Right.
again, because you can tell them all you want. You can tell them, well, look for this shape of footprint or this thing sticking in the water. But after that, it's up to them to develop that living relationship with the environment. So I think it's an important skill to develop anyway.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Plus, you're then able to work better with incomplete information and new environments. You know, someone who does everything by an absolute recipe is not going to be a very good at improvising with situations when they do come up. You know, they're lacking a skill set.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's almost like the difference between a chemist and a chef. A chemist knows for sure this A plus B is going to give you this reaction. That doesn't mean he's going to be able to bake bread.
Mm-hmm. So that kind of segues into the topic that I thought we could sort of talk about today, and that is talking about respect and tolerance. Now, this there was a video that I had seen by someone, and it kind of spurred this topic up, because they were talking about extremisms in, you know, religious beliefs, and they talked about it, and then it came down to the pagan community talking about you know, how there's extremism on different ends of the spectrum. You know, like there's extremism for people who are kind of almost eclectic, sort of kind of reconstructionist, practicing witchcraft. And then on the other end, there was kind of like the extreme of the hardcore, you know, Wiccan who, you know, thinks that the only way to practice is their way. And, you know, and it's just how there can be these extremes in situations. And it just kind of brought to my attention how we can see the extremes of other people. We rarely see the extremes of ourselves. And so when this person made this video, they portrayed it in such a way where they were only really exposing the extremism on the one end, and they weren't really looking at the extremism on the other end, which I thought was really interesting. So just, you know, I mean, there's a lot of practices that maybe I don't necessarily agree with, but, you know, if somebody wants to practice that way, that's entirely up to them. I'm just wondering, have either one of you ever experienced anything like that, or do you have an opinion about that?
Oh, I have, especially when I worked. I worked at a private paid nursing home, and most of the people there, most of them were Christian. There were some that were atheist, a couple that were Buddhist, and I think I was the only witch there. And in the very beginning, I didn't let anyone know at all. That way they could get to know me first. Then I would wear my pentacle, and I was just lucky enough that the boss I had on my third shift knew who and what I was. Her mom had had a friend who was a school teacher that was Wiccan. And so she accepted it. And the nurse that was over all of us nursing knew what I was, but she didn't reveal it. But I would not profess what I believed in. I would not tell them what I believed in, nothing like that. But all sorts of things were coming out about me. You know, I worship, I sacrificed animals. I was evil. I was putting spells on people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I didn't bother anybody. I have friends from all walks of life. And it doesn't bother me. It doesn't matter to me, you know. I just love you for who you are as long as you're not harming anyone or anything else deliberately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, third shift managers tend to be much more function oriented. They tend not to care so much about these little labels from outside of the workplace. They really just want to know if you can get your job done.
Well, the nurse that was over everyone on the whole building knew, because I would specifically ask for certain times off, certain days off. But she never divulged it because there had been ones in the past that did threaten. If they didn't, I guess if they clashed or whatever, I wasn't there at the time, they would threaten to curse somebody or get even with someone or something. And I never did that. But people would try to cost me my job, try to tell people that I did certain things at work that I didn't, or what have you. And she was noticing these things and noticing that I was doing my job to the utmost of my ability. I wasn't pushing any issues off onto anyone else. And so she stood up for me, you know. But and where I live is a huge intolerance for anyone but who believes differently.
Yeah, and in those kind of places, if you left the room, they'd turn on the next one that was the next most different from them. And if that person left the room, they'd turn on the one that was the next most different from them.
Yeah.
You know, they're splitting. This is how you end up with stories that come out of certain areas. Like this is a historical one. This is wild, but one of my favorite examples of this is a congregation got into an argument over whether the new hymnals should be blue or red, and whether because red stood for the blood of Christ and blue stood for, I don't know, the nobility of God or the overcoming of God or something like that. And after being unable to resolve their theological differences, the one half of the congregation, I forget which color, came in the middle of the night and cut the church in half with chainsaws and took their half away. This happened, I think it was in Tennessee or Kentucky, in some little, obviously wooden church. They literally came and took their half of the church, completely oblivious, of course, to the stories about Solomon and the wisdom of Solomon. They actually cut the baby in half. And,
How did they cut the church in half?
Chainsaws and pickup trucks. It was a wooden building. So,
what about the foundation?
Well, I assume the foundation stayed, and you could make some parables about that too, but they took their half of the church building.
That's priceless.
Took it right off the rock it was founded on. And this kind of, church splits happen a lot. And that just tells you something about them.
That's quite literally a church split.
Yeah, literally a church split. This actually happened in the Bible Belt. And
I don't think anything summarizes that as well as literally cutting a church in half over a disagreement.
And it was over that issue. Should the covers of the new hymnals be red or blue? It was literally red team versus blue team. It was it's the most poignant, poetically ironic story ever to come out. And video games make millions of dollars off of this. Hey, you join red team or join blue team, you just fight each other. We charge you a monthly fee to play to the game online. This is a known fact about entertaining humans.
So what do you think is something that let's say that there's a religion that does X out there. At what point do you think that it's no longer tolerant to accept someone else's views? meaning like, something that might be very extreme or illegal or dangerous or something to that effect. I mean, how far do you think it can go? This is all hypothetical, but I mean, how far could it go before you say, oh, well, you know what, that's too much. I can't respect that and I can't tolerate that.
Well, for me, it's easy. When they start impinging upon and hurting people or beings that are not willing participants in their process.
Exactly.
That's the point where it ends. It's like, sorry, that's the one thing your religious freedom won't give you the right to do, is run around oppressing other people. That's where the First Amendment becomes a mirror.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree. What are your thoughts on that, Deborah?
I agree exactly. When you get to where you threaten a being's life, their family, the way they make their money, their home, their safety, their freedom, then you've overstepped your bounds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of like when anytime you begin to start to impose your, quote unquote, will upon other people, or or you feel they should act or do or wear or eat or who they should sleep with or who they should be able to marry. Once you start crossing that line, yeah, I think that's the line that it's like, okay, that's it. We're taking your toys, go sit in the corner and think about what you did with
others.
And I think it's been gone through the constitutional courts on this too, is that the operative word there really is willing participants.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you look at some of the rituals and things that that some of the Buddhists do, some of that stuff, these people put hooks, big steel hooks through their back and hang in the air from them. But they're doing it on purpose. Nobody's making them, they're not being made to do it. They're willingly doing it. So while that would be considered in any other context kind of insane,
mm-hmm.
since it's for that particular purpose that they're a willing participant in, they can do that. They can literally put metal hooks through their flesh and hang around all day, trying to achieve enlightenment. And,
did you say Buddhists or Indians?
Buddhists.
Okay, because there's a Native American tribe. I can't remember the name of it, but they have a ceremony like that.
Yes.
Are you familiar with that, Deborah?
Yes, but I can't think of the name either.
Yeah, but they put hooks, I think, in their back or their front.
Their chest.
Okay, and then they jump off of, I think they jump off of something, and the hooks in it that saves them or catches them or whatever.
They twirl themselves around. They will let the others twirl them around until it literally rips.
Mm. Yeah.
And it's supposed to, from what I understand, it's supposed to help like with a dream quest or visions.
Mm.
It's an ecstatic process, the overcoming of pain or the getting beyond the physical sensation of the body. A lot of ecstatic orders do things like that. I mean, the dervishes in North Africa and the Middle East and Turkey, I mean, they will literally dance for days on end, twirling and dancing until they've hit such a level of exhaustion and being beyond the body. Your biochemistry changes under exposure to that kind of thing for a long period of time. And that's part of how they sort of flirt with the edges of reality.
Mm-hmm.
And shamans the world over also do this in various ways. The Scandinavians would sit, in just their underwear on the ice at, 0 Fahrenheit or something until they were right on the edge of hypothermia.
Mm-hmm.
A modern psychiatrist with no other context would say, well, they're suicidal. They're obviously, but there's an actual process to it that has a known outcome that can be achieved. And so, even though they're endangering themselves, you could die in any of these practices. I think it's okay for people to be willing participants in that as long as they know what they're doing and doing it on purpose.
Right. Yeah. I mean, exactly. I mean, if it's oh yeah, right. If it's willing participation, but they're not like pointing at somebody and saying you have to do this.
Right.
No, it's their. It's completely. It's completely part of their their path of their belief.
And the other thing you'll notice in all of the ethical systems is that they don't do it to children. It's part of coming of age, or it's only for people who have already passed their coming of age.
Right.
And so I think that's the other important consideration. And I think that's somewhere that the constitutional courts in this country have been struggling for quite a while with, parents denying medical attention for their underage children.
Right.
Which a lot of people, there's a few orders of semi-Christianity that do this, where they say, no, we're going to depend entirely on prayer for help. And it's one thing for an adult to do that. It's another thing to do that to a 5-year-old. Yeah. Because the 5-year-old is not at the age of consent, And so I think it is possible for the law to tighten down on that for the good of the safety of the children.
Yeah. I think that's I think that's not really a sticky area. I think it's an area that you can't just be black and white with, because, obviously as an adult, you believe that you are doing whatever you believe is in the best interest of the child. But then there's also in the case of, let's say, getting inoculized for, certain diseases, getting an immunization, you sort of have to do that. And if they have some kind of a religious belief against that, or they have a religious belief about having creation and not being taught in public schools, I mean, there's areas like that where I agree with you. I think it becomes a very not really touchy or sticky, or I'm not too sure what the right word is, but it's not like clear cut. It's not black and white. It's not like, okay, you're the adult, you make all the best decisions, because that decision not only impacts your child negatively, or possibly can impact them negatively, it can also impact the society around you negatively. So, are you still with us there?
Yes, I'm just listening.
Oh, okay. All right. Did you have any thoughts on that?
I agree wholeheartedly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think at some point the courts are going to have to say that, I'm sorry, but your religion doesn't allow you to endanger the entire town with a measles outbreak.
Right.
Which is what's happening now. Where, right now these people are successfully hiding behind I think a false religious claim clause, and especially if you look at cases of, like, let's say a child has, without even getting into the whole inoculation issue, if a child has a massive bacterial infection and you say that your religion doesn't allow them to have antibiotics, that is something society can tell you you're wrong about.
Yeah.
There is a limit to how crackpot you can be and kill sacrificing your own children, whether quickly or in a matter of days or a matter of weeks in the case of cancers, is something that can be considered murder.
Mm-hmm.
We don't allow people to sacrifice their own children on an altar, with a knife.
Right.
Sacrificing them by letting them die of meningitis or bacterial infection, strep, or cancer, I think at some point the courts are going to have to say, in the United States, are going to have to say, look, sorry, that's farther than you guys have the right as a parent.
Yeah.
You're not giving your child the chance to, become of age.
Yeah.
Well, not only that, but some of those things can be transferred to other children, other people, and then you have a widespread.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. If it's a communicable disease, definitely. Yeah. I
mean, children, Child Protective Services will intervene in the parents' rights for a lot of reasons. And a parent who's being just as endangering to their children because of their religion, just as obviously endangering. Your child has a massive staphylococcus infection in their bloodstream, so we're going to pray for it rather than take antibiotics. I think that could be seen as going too far. Yeah. But I can understand why the courts are really cautious about that, because once they weigh in on that, that could become a slippery slope. So it's like you're applauding the courts, but you're also saying, dudes, you know, it's obvious enough, even before you get to you're affecting the rest of the community.
But getting back to like spirituality and different paths, we had a situation here personally, maybe 10 years ago, to where my daughter and her fiance and his daughter were living with us. He had custody of his daughter, who was like 2.5. And of course I practiced, but I practiced alone in my behind closed doors. And DSS was called on me simply because I was not a Christian and because I was a witch and I practiced Wicca. And I finally had to stand up and say, look, you're stepping on federal ground. You need to back off. You don't know what you're talking about. Well, can I see your room? No. Can I see yours? No one goes in there without permission. I practice by myself. She is too young. She's not even of age to make up her own mind. You know, but I mean, my toes were stepped on. They came over here and stuck their nose where it did not belong.
And I'm sorry, answer. When was that?
I'd say approximately 8 to 10 years ago.
Oh, okay. Because because the reason why I asked is because I had heard about one particular case, but that was back in the 90s. But I have heard other people say similar stuff like that. But I do know there's one particular case where this couple got a divorce, sort of similar to yours. But the husband wanted to get custody of the children, and he said that his wife was practicing. She was practicing Santeria, Voodoo, but he said that she was practicing witchcraft, doing all these awful, horrible things, and tried to use that as a defense. And the lady actually ended up getting custody of her children, but it was a long battle. She ended up firing her lawyer and getting a new one because the lawyer wasn't like sticking up for her First Amendment rights and all this other crap.
Oh, I stood my ground because I knew my rights, whether they would be upheld in court or not, would have been another situation. But when she saw that I wasn't backing down, when I started doing tit for tat with her, then she just kind of backed away. And I said, if you're going to pursue this, you need to send someone more well-seasoned in this information so that we can get on with this process. Because she was like in her 20s, mid-20s. And I think she just thought she could bully me into, you know, letting her have her way in my home and interfering in my ritual space and telling me what I can and cannot do. And you don't do that in my house.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And that's a good time to ask them to try that at a synagogue or a mosque first. And see and see if they're allowed into the Holy of Holies, and then come talk to you about getting into your altar space after they've already been into the Holy of Holies and the inner chamber of Judaism and Islam. And, you know, yeah, typically if you put it that way, and, you know, you can always call the ACLU because they have a sweet tooth for that. For anyone out there who's facing this in the future, you know, the ACLU has certain issues they like better than others, and certain ethnic groups they like better than others, but they are out there and they could choose in your area to throw their resources behind the situation, in which case all of that will disappear because they can send, you know, they can send Chicago lawyers down on a case, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think that nowadays, I think the level of tolerance for especially pagans and other religions, I think is much more accepting than at least I experienced when I was growing up. It's just nowadays, I just think it's much, even though I shine a microscope on all these little dark crevices of the internet through my channel, but for the most part, I think the majority of Christians out there, they don't care. They're not worried about what I'm, what I'm doing. And, they don't care about that. They're busy running their own lives. And I think most people are like that. They really don't care. I think they're much more tolerant than they used to be.
I think it depends on what area you live in.
Yeah.
I live in a I live in a rural area. I live outside of Asheville, North Carolina.
Mm.
And Asheville, according to a lot of the people here in this area, think that it's just sinful. It's just horrible, because it's very diverse.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, that's true. There are other areas of the world. Yeah, you're right. It does kind of depend. I mean, I'm a little spoiled because I live here in California, so I think California is much more tolerant than some places.
You live
Though
in
I have heard of other places like Ohio. I've heard is pretty accepting. Oregon.
a lot of pagans in the East, in the Midwest. A lot of pagans
Oh, okay, in the
who
Midwest.
are not getting crap from anybody.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, I mean, my reference is my reference point. I haven't been transported over to North Carolina to find out how it is there. So my reference point is probably a little skewed.
Yeah, you live in hippie, groovy San Francisco, so you're in pagan hog heaven there. There's
Yeah, that's true.
anyone who wants to talk about who's abnormal have lots of other people to point to before they get to you. They've pretty much written off the Pacific Northwest as unconquerable territory for fundamentalism. What you get in a lot of the more intolerant states is you'll get usually the capital city, but certainly there'll be some town or city where kind of all of the different people end up kind of flocking to.
Mm-hmm.
It might be Knoxville, Tennessee, or some particular town, or even in a place that is not really unfriendly to pagans like Wisconsin. There's still the people who are more sort of on the edge of culture, of mainstream culture, tend to flock kind of towards Madison, where there's a big university and the state government. It's they call it the People's Republic of Madison. In Texas, they call it the People's Republic of Austin.
Mm-hmm.
They're joking at how liberal and left it is. And so what you end up seeing is a lot of people coming out of their teen years go off to the college town or the government, free thinking town, and they just live there to avoid the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a multiple of issue people who, not because they're pagan, but let's say because they're like, LGBTQAXZYQS, whatever, people on the rainbow spectrum live in those kind of towns. Usually they're university towns. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of during this sort of clutch time, gear changing time for society. That's for a lot of people, that's their way to live free, is just live somewhere where the hippies live. Mm-hmm. And it's not right, but it's functional.
What do you mean it's not right?
Well, it's not right that someone would have to pick what town they are allowed to live in order to be able to live their life.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
You know what I mean? That's not.
Yeah.
But
I think that's just kind of. Yeah, but I think that's kind of how really America kind of began to naturally sort of congregate. Because you had immigrants come over here, and most likely most immigrants sort of went with the others of their group. The Germans went with the Germans, the Jews went with the Jews, the English went with the English, the Irish went with the Irish, the Chinese went with the Chinese, So it's just everybody sort of automatically began to build their own little neighborhoods, like you have nowadays. You have the Jewish district, the Russian district, the Chinese district, the Japanese district, the Italian district. And people just kind of tend to gravitate towards their own, so it makes sense. But just if you are somebody who's a minority, let's say a religious minority, or even any other type of minority, it can be difficult because you feel isolated. You don't really feel like there's a group that you can identify with, and maybe other people find it less able to be tolerant of somebody who they seem more of an outsider.
Yeah, there's a little bit of birds of a feather flock
Mm-hmm.
together. And that's normal. You'd like to think it wasn't enforced, it wasn't District X.
Yeah, I don't think it was enforced. I mean, I've never come across anything in history where it was enforced.
Well, there's plenty of neighborhoods in this country where you and I shouldn't walk down the street because we don't look the right way.
Oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, definitely.
And so obviously society has some evolution yet to go. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
And there's been plenty of those neighborhoods due to my particular lack of understanding of humans' prejudices, where I have walked down the street. And it was such a surprise to the people who lived there that all they did was stand and gape at me because I clearly didn't know better.
Yeah, you know? But I mean, on the, not really the flip side of that, but just to kind of give maybe a little bit of perspective on that, there's I have heard, of course this is secondhand information, I have heard that there are bars in New York, like Irish bars in New York, where you don't go in there unless you know other people who are in there. You just don't,
Right. And there's always going to be a little of that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little bit of tribalism that's going to remain. I think it will evolve away until it's like, hey, the freaking Norwegian guy walked into an Irish bar. There's got to be a joke in there somewhere. What's the punchline?
Only if there's also a Catholic priest.
Right. And when we get to the point where people are thinking there's got to be a punchline in there somewhere, because, why would this person want to come in this particular bar is interesting and funny. Mm-hmm. At that point, it's okay for that to be basically an Irish bar as long as it's actually possible for someone else to walk in there. I think that's a litmus test for the tolerance of the society. It's like, why would somebody who doesn't watch Star Trek go to a Star Trek convention? People would just think that was maybe funny and a little weird, and why would you bother to be here? But they won't actually throw you out of the convention for not knowing the name of every starship captain in Starfleet. They'll say, well, see, maybe you do belong here, or see what you think of the panels. Mm-hmm. I think that's a legitimate way for people to meet people that are different from them once in a while, as long as you're not going in trying to take over the convention.
Yeah, definitely. What are your thoughts on that, Star Dancer?
Oh,
It's a lot there.
Yeah, there is a lot there. I just, I don't know if any of you know of the 16 different personality types in the world. From the Briggs-Myers test, I am one of the 2% out of the whole population. So I'm kind of like a peacemaker. I just wish everybody would just get along.
Is that the Enneagram, or is that something else?
Are you like an ISTP or something like that?
I'm an INFP or an INFJ.
Oh, you're an INFJ.
I'm a healer and a peacemaker and
you care about how other people feel about each other. Yeah.
Yeah, and an idealist. And I am the 2% out of the whole population on the planet. So it really bothers me a lot when there is so much intolerance, because everyone has got to have something in common. No matter who you run up to on the street, you've got to have something in common that you can get along, that you can find a way just to agree to disagree and just go on your way and just live peaceably.
Yeah. I mean, that helps. Star Dancer, and I agree with you. I think that that's a wonderful philosophy to have. My concern is that, and we see this happening right now, that there are people who will lower their fist. They will lower it down and they say, I don't want to get into the struggle. I don't want to get into this fight. But that person is still coming at you with a knife and they're aiming at your throat.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So you can be as peaceful as you want, but if somebody wants you dead, you have no choice. Well, actually, no, you have a choice. You can die or you can defend yourself.
Oh, of course. I agree.
Or you can run.
I agree. I mean, there comes a time when you have to defend either your home, your job, your family, your rights, something. But I just wish people would understand, especially when it comes to your spirituality. It does not matter what you're worshiping or how you're doing it, as long as you're not infringing on someone's rights. Why can't they just let someone be?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that's the one thing that I've never understood about some people who are really intolerant is how they just can't, how they become almost like they get tunnel vision. They just have like almost like blinders on. And the only thing they can see is the world through their own, biblical lens. And that's it. And I honestly sometimes have to reflect upon myself, reflect upon my own path and how I look at things and how I look at other people and wonder, do I have blinders on, or am I looking at a certain practice or a certain situation or a certain something where I'm perceiving it through my own in my own lens, my own perspective. And
Yeah,
it can be difficult to not do that.
every time I think that, okay, I'm all right, that I'm doing what I'm supposed to, I'll hear a little voice. Are you keeping yourself in check?
Yeah, and sometimes when the people Jeremy and Energy Witch are talking about being sort of the first real pagan that people have met in their work environment or in their environment.
Mm-hmm.
And they're saying some really cool stuff. I'm keeping up with it by having the chat popped out where I can see it. And they're saying some really cool stuff about that. And one of the things that I've done when I've met people who are outgoing Christians, say, meaning, like they're in a public place doing their Bible study and stuff like that. And when it comes up, that they bring it up or whatever, or they start to say, how Christian they are or something. And my response has been, oh, that's okay. I don't mind people being Christian. I mean, most Christians are pretty okay people. They're not like those extremists. And, and put them in the reference frame of the spectrum of the people in their own faith. And, make them aware that, oh, yeah, that's right. There are some Christians that I'm really embarrassed to have as Christians because they're such horrible people. And that then they try to be the good. Then they try to be the good one. Mm-hmm. You give them the opportunity to be the good example without pushing on them not to be the bad example. To give them the chance to prove that they're not Jerry Falwell or one of these other, oppressive. What's the guy that I can't remember his name? The one who refuses to die, the televangelist who refuses to die.
Billy Graham?
No, anyways.
Pat Robertson?
Pat Robertson, yeah. Yeah, to prove that they're not that guy. And then they become much more full of the good virtues of their own religion when they see you. And they also become more comfortable with the fact that they're doing their Bible study in a restaurant or something, because they're, you've said, I'm happy to have you follow your faith here and not let it be anything about me.
Mm-hmm.
And then they will ask, in the spirit of tolerance, what I'm about. Because here I've said, well, I don't mind Christians. They're okay. They don't bother me as long as they're not being, Pat Robertson,
right.
Or the Ku Klux, or the Ku Klux Klan or something like that.
We have those there.
If you're not one of those guys, you're okay with me. You're not going to come hunt me down in the woods with large caliber weapons and hunting dogs. You seem okay. I think we're past that stage where Christians try to come and hunt shamans down in the woods using large caliber weapons and hunting dogs, and this puts them in the mind of the various ways that their own religion has behaved over the years. At which point, and then if they share something, they're sharing something about the positive virtues that they're actually getting out of their religion. And it becomes more comfortable for them. They don't feel like they're in a space where their religion is under attack or their religion is the exception. And they're much more willing to talk about what it is that they're getting out of it. Mm-hmm. And that has worked amazingly well, is to, when someone is, because you're forcing them to be the good example of a good example. And as a deliberate technique, that works. Plus then, they're probably a nice person anyway. And so you're making friends with a nice person. Mm-hmm. Because, real asshole Christians don't sit there in a public place and do their Bible study,
Yeah.
That's not what, these are people who are trying so hard to be virtuous or to be one with their spiritual path that they're willing to have it out there in public where most people aren't.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I sort of, maybe this is a little side story to that, or kind of piggybacking on it, but there was when I first started going into the Now You See TV chat room, because they had their YouTube chat room, then they had another sort of private chat room that was on sort of a server that then fed into their show so they could answer like certain questions and stuff like that. And so I was in that chat room, and I was very honest with people. I told people that I was a witch and I was checking out the channel and I was interested to hear what they had to say. And I had kind of this relationship where sort of, they kind of tolerated me because I was quote unquote behaving. Basically what behaving was I was not constantly questioning everything. I was not constantly sticking up for stuff. I was not constantly correcting their lies. But as time went on, I found it harder and harder to bite my tongue. And so I began to speak up more and say, hey, you're not, that's not right. That information is incorrect. And soon enough, I became an annoyance to them and I was blocked. So it's kind of like I have a hard time sort of taking that sort of, I think that not all Christians, obviously, I'm not speaking of this, but a lot of Christians who feel sort of holier than thou, they have this kind of position. They just sort of cut you off. They don't even listen to you. Even if you're really polite and you take, there's just so much you have to do to try and actually talk with them. And whatever, no matter what, at some point, they're just going to be like, they're just going to close themselves off from you,
Yeah, well, you were going into their nest where they were busy being, their little bubble of the internet where they're kind of letting their craziness out. And let's face it, the bubble was sponsored by people who were obvious liars and frauds. So they were drawing more people of that mindset. You go into some rough territory,
Yeah. Yeah, but it was just really interesting that it's like, they don't mind you being there as long as you're not like, asking legitimate questions and pointing out inconsistencies and stuff like that. That's kind of interesting. So, but this was a lot of fun. I was just gonna have this go for an hour, but I know it always takes us a little while to get these things working. But Animist. So how did you get into the chat? Did you click the link in Twitter or was it the one I emailed you?
The internet still will not let you email me for apparently any reason. I don't know why. The internet just hates that. But I was able to use the link you sent through Twitter once I figured out which link it was. I was able to use the Twitter link to Twitter, for some bizarre reason, scrolls backwards. It scrolls from the bottom up, which is bizarre. I don't know why they do that, but they do that. So I had to figure out to go to the bottom of the list of links that you have sent me over the periods of time. And the bottom link. So when you link me on Twitter, I'm good.
Okay, good. Okay, good. I'll do that. Yeah, because you can look at the date of the link and looking at the date of the link, figure out which one it is. Yeah, because I know it is kind of annoying.
It just took me a few minutes to remember that because it's been a while since we talked. So
yeah, it has been. Yeah. I'm sorry I haven't been doing these more frequently. I've just been really busy lately, and so I'm gonna try to get more disciplined about this and have this hangout.
But you know what? Have it when you feel like hanging out, man. I mean, it's not a job. It's not a job.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but I mean, right. I know, but I mean, still sometimes it's kind of like when you do videos, there is a certain level you do have to push yourself. It is sort of like a job, even though it's a job that kind of only really pays you in your own ego being stroked a little bit.
Yeah, so come on when you want to be on, when you feel like being on. I try to check. Sometimes I may not be able to be here anyway. Yeah. But especially, like I said, lately, the last few months, I've been on a bit of an adventure roundabout, and so I haven't necessarily been online regularly. And it's been fun. It's been interesting, and I'm back somewhere where it snowed yesterday.
Nice.
Yeah, it snowed yesterday. So I'm back on the edges of the Great White North. So, but if you think you might be hanging out more again on Wednesday, I'll try to keep checking for the thing. And
definitely.
If you think you're going to be in the mood to do it, I know you can post something on YouTube that says this might be happening on this date, like 3 days in advance or something. Some of the other channel, I don't know if you know how to do that.
Oh, okay. Oh, so give you more advance notice of it.
If there were more notice, then I would definitely rearrange my schedule so I could, hang out with you because you're fun to hang out with.
Sure. Yeah, you know what, Animus? That's a really good idea. Yes.
I got lucky tonight that I happened to.
So I could post like if I'm going to have a hangout, I could post it. What do you think? Like 3 days before? You think that would be good? That
would be plenty of time. I definitely get on here 2 or 3 times a week still, and will be able to.
Okay.
Now that I'm, not wandering the wilderness so much, I'm should for the next while. Well, you know how my thing goes.
Yeah.
So I went somewhere where I'm now waiting for spring again. It was almost spring where I was, and then it was like the middle of winter, and it was a good time to change ecosystems. And I went north, and now it's like now I'm waiting for spring again. It's like I'm watching the trees every day. You guys making leaves yet? But yeah, I should be able to check for those. But yeah, if you put it up a couple of days in advance, I will definitely arrange my schedule to be able to see you.
Awesome.
You're cool. Everybody who comes to these events are cool.
Good. And Deborah, thank you so much. I'm so glad you could join, and I could finally get to meet you face to icon. I didn't want to have my camera on.
I really enjoyed this. Thank you, and I'm love to meet Animus.
Yeah, he's a good guy. Animus has been following me for a long time.
Yeah, I found your channel sort of inadvertently somehow, like somewhere around 2009. I thought, oh, this guy's got a sense of humor. I was literally going on the internet saying, do any of these neo-pagans or Wiccans or witches or whatever they're calling themselves, I'm label fluid. I was like, do any of these people actually have a sense of humor about themselves? And I found a couple that did.
Good.
And I've enjoyed your content ever since.
Good. Well, I'm happy to hear that. So, all right. Well, I think I'm going to end this. So thanks again. And definitely I will post it up. I might have one next Wednesday. I'm also going to try to have another general hangout that everybody can come and join on Saturday. So it'll be the same time. It'll be Saturday, 7 p.m. Pacific time. So whatever that is in your time zone. And then next Wednesday, I will also try to have one of these, and I'll post it up like 3 days before we have it. So,
all righty.
Okay, I'll look forward to that. I love hearing from more people, and it's always good to see you guys. You collect a wonderful group.
Yeah, I know. I do. A lot of the people who hang out in the chat room, watch my videos are really awesome people, and yeah, you guys are fantastic.
And Heathen Haven Sunday nights is always something going on there. For anyone who doesn't know about Heathen Haven yet, check out the Sunday night show and see whether it's going in a direction yet that works for you, because that's often a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely. All righty, folks. Thank you so much, and have a good night. Blessed be.
Blessed be.